The following is a sponsored program paid for by First Alliance Credit Union. Welcome to Good Money Moves, featuring Jenna Taubel from First Alliance Credit Union and Andy Brownell. Here's Andy Brownell on Rochester's News Talk, 1340 KROC AM and 96.9 FM.
Welcome to Good Money Moves. I'm Andy Brownell, along with Jenna Taubel, Director of Brand and Digital Member Experience with First Alliance Credit Union. How's it going this week, Jenna?
I'm doing good. How about you, Andy?
Doing well. So last week we talked about the best times of the year to buy a car, new or used.
Yes.
What is the Good Money Moves topic for this week?
Well, we are going to talk again about financial goals. And I specifically wanted to talk about how do you really select and prioritize which of your financial goals that you want to work towards. Right, because you can have more than one goal that you want and envision yourself working towards at any one time, right? And so in previous episodes, when we've talked about setting those personal financial goals, we usually say that you need to sit down, think about what you want for the future, write down some goals, and then kind of select the ones that are most important to you. And this isn't a bad strategy, but what often goes unsaid is that sometimes you can get really overwhelmed by all the things that you do want to do, and you might not know which goal to tackle first.
Okay.
So if you're stuck trying to figure out what goals you should tackle, what you can do is really ask yourself some questions that will help you get some clarification and really help you start to prioritize those financial goals for yourself.
That's why I really wanted to win that Powerball, because then I wouldn't have to worry about priorities. I just go, I'll do all of them.
Yes.
But the rest of us have to prioritize. It's a good topic. Yeah. And I agree. It can be really tough figuring out what needs to be taken care of in what order.
Yeah.
So what's the first question I should be asking to prioritize my financial goals?
Yeah. So the first question is actually seemingly simple. And that is your financial goal essential? So you should be asking this question about any financial goal that you set. So now, not every and why you need to ask yourself this is because not every financial goal is necessarily there to improve your finances in some way. But you should really prioritize those types of goals over the ones that are more fun, right? It's the old need versus want conversation, right? So if you're starting to kind of set some goals and you've got maybe that brainstorm list going of all the different types of things that you'd like to try to accomplish with your money, right? Whether it's saving for an emergency fund, trying to get out of credit card debt, maybe buying a more reliable vehicle, maybe you're in the stage where you're trying to save up for a down payment on a house, or you're really wanting to focus on saving on retirement or paying for your kids' college, or those fun ones, planning a vacation, right?
Sure.
But more than likely, you can't achieve all these goals at once. So you have to start to decide which of these is truly essential to building a solid financial footing for yourself. And then if you already have that more solid financial footing, that's when you might be able to start to prioritize some of those non-essential goals, like those vacation goals, or in even some cases, paying for your kids' college.
But I did notice that the vacation was right at the bottom of your list of priorities. So it did not escape me whatsoever. So I'd like to start with a vacation, but I don't have really much of an emergency fund. Should I just completely forget about a vacation this year?
Well, there's nothing stopping you from saving for multiple financial goals at the same time, right? You can set aside money for more fun financial goals while you're saving for some of these more essential goals. However, you have to choose. If you have to choose between the two, right, an essential goal and one that's nice to have, choose the essential financial goal. So, for example, if your emergency account only has $200 in it, you might want to choose to take a staycation instead, right? We talked about some ways to do that just a couple weeks ago, so that you can focus on building up that emergency fund first. And that may not sound as fun, but for example, if you get into a car crash or you have to buy a new stove, you'll be very happy with your past self for having prioritized that emergency fund over going on a lavish vacation. So, or even a non-lavish vacation, whatever. I mean, let's be real. Even if none of those things happen, right, then you still have that really good peace of mind you get from knowing that that emergency won't flood you with debt, right? Even a vacation cannot give you that peace of mind. You'll have fun for a week and you might have good memories of that, but it doesn't give you the peace of mind that if an emergency happens, that you can handle that financially.
Yep. I actually have a great example of that. Many, many moons ago, when we were much younger and still scraping by,
Mm-hmm.
and the kids were with us, and we decided we got to go. We have to have a vacation with the kids. So, didn't have hardly any savings to speak of at the time. And lo and behold, halfway to our destination, the radiator went out on my van. So I had to be an emergency repair on the road.
Yep.
And that was all put on credit card. And guess what? That vacation wasn't all that much fun for me.
Yeah.
I think the kids still managed to have a good time, but I was a little grumpy.
Yeah. And that honestly, though, that is such a common story, right? You plan a great road trip and then your car breaks down.
Yeah.
Or, like that is so common of a thing to have happen. And what a great way to still be able to enjoy that vacation had you had that emergency fund to rely on for those types of things. And it wouldn't have ruined the vacation. So those are the things that you want to be thinking about.
Where were you 25 years ago, for crying out loud?
Well, I was born. I was alive. I was just very small.
All right. Well, vacations are important. Allows you to get away and relax. But you're right. When you have the emergency fund, that peace of mind allows you to actually enjoy it. Yeah. What's the next question we should be asking for setting these priorities and getting it right?
Yeah. So the next question you should ask yourself is, what do I value the most? And this doesn't have to be a deep dive into your ultimate financial goals necessarily, but we will get to that later. That is part of the equation. But really what I mean by this is you should think about what is most important to you at this point in your life. So for example, let's say you have your essential goals taken care of, and you're wondering what goals you should set next for yourself. You may come up with things like the following: buy a new car, remodel your kitchen, or get season tickets to the Minnesota Vikings because this is the year they're going to the Super Bowl. You just know it.
Been saying that for how many years?
So each of these goals is attractive, right? They all provide some level of happiness to you and some value to you. But maybe you don't have the money to do all of them this year. So which goal then do you choose? So this is where your values come into play. You maybe feel that remodeling your kitchen is important. It's a much bigger goal, and you'll enjoy the benefits of remodeling your kitchen for years to come. However, you might also feel that new car is really important. Perhaps you have a new job that has a longer commute. Or you're worried that your current vehicle maybe just isn't going to be reliable much longer, and you want to get ahead of that. But you might also even feel that seeing the Minnesota Vikings is important. And if you've always loved the Vikings, you can finally afford the cost of these season tickets, and it's been a long time dream of yours. So here's the kicker. None of these choices would be wrong, right? It all depends on what your values are in that moment and for that year. Even a goal that might seem frivolous to outsiders, like season tickets to the Vikings, might be extremely meaningful to you and your family. So remember that you have to make your decisions based on your values specifically and no one else's.
All right. I think, though, logically we can eliminate the Vikings tickets from the mix just because I don't care if you think they're going to win the Super Bowl. They're not. So this next year is going to be just as good as this year.
Oh, that's your value system, Andy.
As a person who's been a fan of the Vikings since I was a little tyke, and I'm still waiting. No bitterness. Okay. We're talking about setting your goals, prioritizing them so you make the best financial decisions, make the best good money move was setting your financial goals. And we'll continue in a moment. Jenna Taubel with First Alliance Credit Union Right here on News Talk 1340, KROC AM and 96.9 FM.
Good Money Moves continues in moments with Andy Brownell and Jenna Taubel from First Alliance Credit Union. This is News Talk 1340, KROC AM and 96.9 FM. We're talking good money moves with Andy Brownell and Jenna Taubel from First Alliance Credit Union on Rochester's News Talk 1340, KROC AM and 96.9 FM.
We are back with Good Money Moves. Jenna Taubel with First Alliance Credit Union. I'm Andy Brownell. The topic today is prioritizing your financial goals.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess as we're asking ourselves questions, what is the next one?
Yeah, well, you do need to ask yourself what you can realistically achieve from a financial goal standpoint. So this is one of those truths that nobody really likes admitting, but unfortunately, many people have dreams that they simply can't achieve with their finances at this point in time. So, for example, if you'd like to buy a beach house and you are in a minimum wage job, you're just not going to be able to save up enough money in a reasonable amount of time to buy a beach house. However, sometimes figuring out whether or not your goals are realistic isn't as clear as what I just mentioned, right? So here's another scenario for you to think about. Let's say you really want to take that vacation to Hawaii this year. You have a decent job, one that pays, let's say, $75,000 a year. So you really shouldn't have a problem setting aside money for this goal. But on the other hand, you took out a line of credit to do some remodeling that you're still paying back. You had to take $800 out of your savings to pay for some new tires on your car unexpectedly. So then the question becomes, can you realistically afford to save for a trip to Hawaii right now, knowing that you've depleted part of your savings and are also trying to pay down this debt?
Yeah. I gather the answer is no, right?
Well, it depends, as always. So this is where SMART goals and spending plans really come to prove their worth. And we've talked about both of these things at length throughout the life of this program, right? So if you've got a current spending plan, or also known as a budget, this is where you're going to keep track of all your expenses, right? Including that line of credit payment that we talked about in the example. So you can kind of start to get a sense of how long you'll actually take to pay this down and rebuild your savings account at the same time, right? So you can make a SMART goal out of going to Hawaii. Remember, SMART means specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. So once you've kind of set up your SMART goal, then you can figure out how much money you really need to go on vacation in Hawaii and how long you'd need to save if you put the extra money in your spending plan towards that goal. So you could discover that your trip to Hawaii is actually doable with maybe a few budget tweaks, or you'll realize that you should really, really focus on paying your line of credit and rebuilding your savings first. Having said that, it doesn't mean that you have to give up on the goal entirely, right? Let's say you realize that it's just not realistic this year. You might just start saving money for Hawaii now anyway and revisit your goal once your line of credit has been paid off. Or, regardless of what step you choose to take in the situation, right? The important thing now is that you know where you stand financially. And from there, you're better equipped to really decide whether saving for this financial goal is possible or not.
What I like about this system, there's a couple things I like about it.
Yeah.
It forces you to be honest with yourself.
Yes.
By being analytical this way,
mm-hmm.
and writing it down and putting it in front of you, mm-hmm. you can't ignore the realities of it.
Exactly.
And the realities could work out in favor of the vacation as well. It's not necessarily a no, but it can also point out to you that, yeah, I really probably should wait until next year. This really is more urgent than I thought. But the other aspect of it, I think, is it's motivational.
It is.
So by putting it down this way and looking at it analytically, it may motivate me to find ways to save some money in my budget on some other frivolous things that, yeah, maybe they're just not as important as that vacation to Hawaii.
Yes,
So I
exactly.
can say, you know what? If I ditch my streaming subscriptions for the next year, is that worth it to go to Hawaii?
Right. Or maybe you like to go to Vikings games. Maybe don't go to a couple throughout the year,
Right.
so you can put that money towards a Hawaii trip, right? Those are things
Yeah.
that going through that process forces you to consider and decide. And
Or if it's really important,
there's
go get a side gig too.
exactly, and that's the beauty of the framework that doesn't tell you what to do. It helps you decide what's best for you and what's realistic for you and your situation,
Yep.
and not anyone else's.
So that goes back to the first part of our discussion where you talk about your values and what you
Right.
value. Yeah. You're making sense, Jenna Taubel.
I try.
Okay. Well, we'll take a break. We're talking about setting personal financial goals, prioritizing them to make the proper, well, probably the best decisions you can make in your situation to make it a good money move. And we'll be back on News Talk 1340, KROC AM and 96.9 FM.
Good Money Moves continues in moments with Andy Brownell and Jenna Taubel from First Alliance Credit Union. This is News Talk 1340, KROC AM and 96.9 FM. We're talking good money moves with Andy Brownell and Jenna Taubel from First Alliance Credit Union on Rochester's News Talk 1340 KROC AM and 96.9 FM.
Good money moves on News Talk 1340 KROC AM and 96.9 FM with Jenna Taubel. First Alliance Credit Union financial goals, prioritizing them to make the best decisions. And I know earlier you mentioned ultimate life goals.
Oh, yes.
So is it time to talk about those sorts of things?
It certainly is. It certainly is. One of the last questions I would encourage you to ask yourself when you're considering financial goals and what to work towards is really ask yourself, what do you want your future to look like? And this might be really difficult for some people to visualize. So don't worry if you don't have an immediate answer to this. But even thinking 5 years ahead can seem really nebulous sometimes. As a, the here and now is here and now. It's in your
Keeps you
face.
busy.
And trying to think ahead 5 years, it can be hard, especially when you're not even sure where it is you want to be, right? So having said that, knowing what you want to achieve then in 5, 10, even 20 years is also difficult, but it's also a must when you're starting to set personal financial goals, because this isn't just because you'll be able to use this information to set those long-term goals, but it's because you can use this information to start to choose short and medium-term goals to pursue to help you build those building blocks to get to those longer-term goals. So I want to go back to that example before the break where we talked about working that minimum wage job and wanting to buy a beach house.
Not realistic.
Right? Not in this moment, not in the short term, not in the here and now. But if you really, really want to live in a beach house one day, like that is the ultimate goal, that is what will signal success in life for you. You can use that goal as a roadmap to then set other goals, right? Priority number one, maybe being that you need to find a new job that pays more. And that might mean that you need to consider going back to school to get a degree that will help you change careers, or you need to pick up a side hustle, or you might decide against pursuing other financial goals and put money you are going to spend on those towards the beach house for a long time, right? So this is where you have to start to go, is this truly the goal, your long-term goal? Even if you can't meet it tomorrow or 20 years from now, if this is where you want to be, you have to start to view those smaller stepping stones as financial goals that build to that bigger one.
This is a hard question or hard scenario to ask. Earlier, you talked about realism and being realistic and the minimum wage job in the beach house. Is it possible that if you, even for these long-term goals, that you could be a bit unrealistic and that might be a detriment to your financial goal planning?
I mean, it's possible. It's possible. People make the wrong choices about finances all the time. But I think what's important is, and again, using a beach house as an example, if that is where you will find happiness, then I don't. Sometimes it goes back to that value question that we talked about earlier. And you might make a lot of sacrifices along the way that other people wouldn't, or other people may judge you for making those sacrifices. But at the end of the day, if you end up in that beach house and that's where you want to be, then I guess it's up to you and your personal values whether or not that was worth it.
See,
once you get there.
I think the beach house is attainable, especially if you give yourself enough of a head start on it, I guess.
Yeah.
But no, I get the point. And then especially if you're young and starting out, and you're saying it's hard to even imagine 5 years out. But if you were to come up with that ultimate dream type thing, I want to live like Jimmy Buffett on the beach.
I mean, if you want to take that a step further, you might have to be willing to move out of the country to afford that beach house as well.
Yeah,
so that's also an option.
But if the first step in this project is, okay, I want that kind of lifestyle, then you're going to have to look in the mirror and go, this minimum wage job is not going to cut it. So then what are my next steps? And you pointed out that very well mean, hey, my decision not to go to school was not the right one. I better rethink that. Yeah. Okay. Fantastic information as always, Jenna.
Yeah.
But as always, it's a big topic, and there's tons of things to think about in regards to this, especially this last part about ultimate goals. Are there other places we could go to find more information?
Of course, as always, I encourage our listeners to visit our website at firstalliancecu.com. You can subscribe to our blog. We release new financial tips and advice every week. You can listen to past episodes of this show at firstalliancecu.com/podcast or on kerosnews.com. You can also subscribe to Good Money Moves on Apple, Google, and Spotify podcasts. And if you love our show, please take a moment to leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. And of course, if you have a financial topic that you would like us to cover on Good Money Moves, please send me an email at marketing@firstalliancecu.com. And of course, I strongly encourage you to reach out to our team at First Alliance Credit Union so they can help you start making good money moves today.
And share with them your financial goals. It might help you along the right path. Who knows?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's First Alliance Credit Union, federally insured by NCUA and an equal housing lender. As always, thanks again, Jenna.
My pleasure.
And we'll do this again next week. Another episode of Good Money Moves coming up right here on News Talk 1340, KROC AM and 96.9 FM.